In the dusty hills of Henryville, Indiana, on September 9, 1890, a boy named Harland Sanders entered the world under a sky heavy with promise and peril. His father, a butcher by trade, died of typhoid fever when Harland was just 5, leaving his mother to scrape by with whatever work she could find. Young Harland learned early that life was no fairy tale. At 7, he was frying chicken for his siblings on a wood stove, his small hands calloused from the heat and the haste. "Boy," his mother would say, wiping sweat from her brow, "you gotta make it tasty, or it ain't worth the trouble." Those words, simple as they were, planted the seed of something extraordinary, a recipe for survival, flavored with grit and grace. School was a fleeting dream for Harland. He dropped out at 12 to work on a farm, trading books for pitchforks and lessons for labor. By 13, he was washing dishes on a steamboat churning the Ohio River, the rhythmic slap of waves against the hull mirroring the relentless churn of his ambitions. Jobs came and went like summer storms. Railroad fireman at 16, where the soot blackened his lungs and dreams alike. A stint as a blacksmith's apprentice, hammering iron until his arms ached like they belonged to a man twice his age. At 18, he married Claudia, a quiet woman with eyes like Kentucky bluegrass, and fathered 3 children who became his anchor and his fire. The 1920s roared with possibility, but for Harland, they whispered of struggle. He tried his hand at law, passed the bar at 21 after a 6-month cram, but a courtroom brawl with a client ended that chapter before it began. Undeterred, he sold life insurance door to door, his pitch as sharp as the pocket watch he dangled like a talisman. Success flickered. He became a top agent, but the Great Depression snuffed it out. Factories closed, bellies emptied, and Harland, now in his 30s, found himself jobless again, staring at eviction notices that mocked his manhood. It was in Corbin, Kentucky, in 1930, that fate served up its first real break, and a heaping sight of heartbreak. Harland bought a service station on a lonesome stretch of U.S. Route 25. Gasoline flowed, but so did hunger. Folks pulled over not just for fuel, but for the aroma wafting from his wife's kitchen. Golden fried chicken, spiced with a secret blend of 11 herbs and spices that Harland had tinkered with for years. Pressure cooked for tenderness, he'd boast, demonstrating the method with a rented cooker that hissed like a contented dragon. Travelers raved, locals lingered. Soon, a diner bloomed beside the pumps, and Harland's chicken became legend. By 1935, Governor Ruby LaFoon dubbed him Colonel Sanders, an honorary title for his community spirit, complete with white suit and string tie. Life tasted like victory, crispy and hot. But victory, Harland learned, was as fleeting as a summer rain. The World War rationed everything but resolve, yet peace brought progress in the form of highways. In 1955, the new Interstate 75 sliced through Corbin like a knife through dough, bypassing his thriving Sanders Court and Cafe. Overnight, the roar of engines faded to a whisper, and the diner that once fed 100 souls a day stood empty, echoing with ghosts of laughter and clinking forks. At 65, Harland Sanders cashed his last Social Security check, $105 a month, barely enough for beans and regret. His wife had passed years earlier, his children scattered like seeds on wind-swept fields. He sold what remained of the cafe for pennies on the dollar, packed his pressure fryer, a few handwritten recipe cards, and a heart full of fire into his old Plymouth. "If the mountain won't come to Muhammad," he muttered, "then Muhammad's gotta go to the mountain." What followed was an odyssey of the soul, a pilgrimage across America's backroads that would etch Harland's name into eternity, or oblivion. He drove from state to state, knocking on doors of restaurants, motels, and greasy spoons. "Try my chicken," he'd say, his voice steady as Kentucky limestone. "It's the best you'll ever serve. I'll show you how to make it, train your cooks, and take a nickel a bird." The pitch was simple, the dream colossal. Franchise his recipe, let it multiply like loaves and fishes. The first, no, came easy, in Tennessee, a harried owner waving him off like a pesky fly. "We got our own way," the man grumbled. Harland nodded, tipped his hat, and drove on. Rejection 2, 3, 10, they blurred into a litany of slammed doors and averted eyes. In Missouri, a diner boss laughed outright. "Old man, you're dreamin'. Folks want burgers, not fancy birds." Harland slept in his car that night, the dashboard's glow his only company, whispering affirmations to the stars, one yes. That's all it takes. Months turned to a year. His savings evaporated, meals were whatever scraps he could beg or buy. At 66, with frost rimming his mustache, he tallied 300 no's. Ohio's winters bit deep, but so did doubt. Am I a fool? He'd wonder, staring at the rearview mirror's lined face. Memories flooded. The boy frying chicken at 7, the young husband vowing provision, the colonel crowned in white. No, he wasn't a fool. He was a fighter, and fighters don't quit when the bell rings, they dance through the pain. Rejection 500 landed in Illinois, where a skeptical chef tested the recipe and spat it out. Too much pepper, he sneered. Harland bit his tongue, adjusted the blend in his mind, and pressed on. He learned to read faces, the furrowed brow of indifference, the tight lips of dismissal. Each no honed his pitch, polished his persistence. In Texas, a kind-hearted proprietor fed him supper but shook his head, can't afford the risk. Harland thanked him profusely, left a sample batch simmering on the stove as a parting gift, and hit the road again. His car became a rolling laboratory, spices jostling in the trunk, notes scribbled on napkins. 11 herbs, he'd recite like a mantra. Sage for wisdom, thyme for time, paprika for passion. By 1000, the weight pressed like an anvil. Harland's hands trembled as he gripped the wheel in Utah's salt flats, the vast emptiness mirroring his spirit. He'd buried friends, outlived dreams, watched empires rise while his crumbled. God, he prayed one dawn, if this ain't meant, give me a sign. But signs came as no's. 1001 in a Boise cafe, where the owner cited, corporate chains comin'. 1005 in a Wyoming roadhouse, dismissed for being too old school. His body ached, arthritis in the knuckles that once wielded spatulas, eyes dimmed by road glare. Yet, in the quiet hours, a voice whispered, the night is darkest before dawn. Dawn broke on the 1009th door, in the autumn of 1952, at the Dean family restaurant in Salt Lake City. Dave Thomas, no relation to the Wendy's founder, but a man with a nose for flavor, listened as Harland, white suit rumpled but spirit unbowed, demonstrated his magic. The fryer hummed, the air thickened with allure. Dave's wife tasted first, eyes widening, a slow smile. This, she said, changes everything. Dave nodded. We'll do it, partners. That yes was thunderclap and symphony. Harland trained the cooks, watched his chickens fly off plates. Orders trickled, then poured. By 1956, franchises dotted the map, 9 in Utah, then California, Ohio. He incorporated Kentucky Fried Chicken, the colonel's face beaming from buckets worldwide. At 73, he sold the company for $2 million, a fortune in those days, yet stayed on as mascot, his bow tie a beacon of belief. Harland Sanders died in 1980 at 90, but his legacy. It's in every crispy bite. Every red and white banner flapping in the wind. He proved that age is no barrier, failure no finale. Rejected 1009 times, he started at 65 not because it was easy, but because it was his. And in that unyielding pursuit, he taught us, dreams don't expire, they demand devotion. The road may be long, the no's deafening, but one yes can rewrite your story. So, when life slams the door, remember the colonel in his Plymouth, spices in tow. Knock again, and again, because the world needs your flavor, bold, secret, unstoppable. Your 1010th try might just be the one that feeds the masses.